So today I'm going to make a video about a topic that was really important to me as a sports bike rider before I bought this Harley Sportster 48, and that is the top 5 things that you can expect as a sports bike rider if you're looking at picking up a Harley 48 or a Sportster Iron or any of the other Sportster models. What are the things and the differences that you're going to experience from what you're used to on a sports bike moving over to a Sportster? So maybe let's call it sports bike versus Sportster. Let's get on it. Okay, so the number one difference that you're going to notice first off is the position on the bike. Now when you're on your sports bike, you've got your knees tucked right into the side of the tank, you've got your feet right back up in the air, and you're pushing therefore your weight onto your shoulders and onto your wrists, so you can tuck in nice and tightly behind the screen. Now on a Sportster you don't have that. In fact, on this one, which is the 48, for those of you guys that don't follow the channel, I'm running forward controls, which are the standard foot control configuration on this bike. So what that means is that actually the distribution of weight is more on my arse rather than on my shoulders. And actually for me that's just what I wanted, and that was one of the reasons that I personally made the switch from a sports bike to a Sportster. Was I was finding that as quite a relatively tall guy, perhaps above average at 6 foot, that it was aching my shoulders quite a lot on my Kawasaki Ninja. So this seating position was perfect for me. Now obviously I've put on the flat drag bars here as an aftermarket modification, which does stretch the old shoulders a little bit more. Sitting in the queue, cooking like a barbecue. Come on lights, I'm baking. Right, I think this is probably a good time to illustrate point number 2, which is that everything on this bike vibrates like hell. So when you're on your sports bike, everything is so smooth and tight and crisp, and when you change gear and you pull away, it's like gliding on butter. And on this, it's like driving over coarse gravel. Now personally I really like that. I think it gives it kind of a raw feel, which yeah, I just think it's quite classic and old school and in keeping with the style, and I just love the fact that it's not perfect and really well tuned. But some people really dislike that, you know, when you're riding along. I mean, here I'm stationary and it is pretty vibration-y. When I pull away, okay, so running it at about 2,500 RPM. Alright, smoothed out a little bit, but still it's a big lumpy vibration-y engine, and what that's going to mean is things are going to rattle loose a little bit. You're going to have to be on top of things like that. You might have seen some of my other videos. Oh, fly in the eye. A few of my other videos, there are bolts and stuff like that fall off this thing all the time, so you do need to kind of stay on top of it. But that's part of the character of it, and that I think is how I would summarise one of the key differences on this bike, is it has bags of character. Alright, so number 1 is the seating position, number 2 is vibration. I think number 3 is going to be probably the most obvious thing to a lot of people, is power. Now this is a 1200cc bike. I can't off the top of my head remember the exact horsepower. I think it's something like 80. I'm going to put it somewhere on the video and correct myself later when I'm editing. But the point is, for a sports bike like that one there, that is maybe a 900cc, you're going to get a hell of a lot more horsepower out of it than you get out of this. But what this bike does have is a lot of torque. So what that means is when I'm in the low rev range, so 2,500 RPM like I am now, and I pull the throttle back, alright, so it's not rapid acceleration like you're going to get, oh for f***'s sake, it's not rapid acceleration like you're going to get on a sports bike, but you do perhaps get on those lower revs the power, the torque kicking in earlier. So it's a strong engine, but not a high revving, super accelerating engine. The key difference with all of that is that the pleasure in riding comes out differently. So on a sports bike, a lot of the fun comes from being able to use the acceleration and the speed. And on this bike, actually, a lot of the fun comes from the riding experience. I know that sounds really kind of cliche and a bit cheeseball. It's hard to describe it, but I remember the first time I test rode one of these, I just couldn't stop smiling. It just felt so much fun to ride, even though I wasn't flying around. And I think it's the noise, it's the wind in your face, just the whole experience of it felt very raw. And for me, that gave me a thrill I couldn't get on a sports bike. Well, the side effect of that is it can be a bit annoying to overtake lorries and trucks and vans. Alright, so point number 4. Biggest difference that I noticed when you're on the bike, you're riding, wind. Now, I fully accept that you're going to get this with a lot of different types of bikes that aren't fully screened. But it was very, very apparent to me, coming from a sports bike that's got a double bubble screen and you can bend over and tuck right beneath it, onto a bike like this, just how much impact the wind has on your feel. And I think that's probably enhanced because you're not having your weight distributed over the bars and you've got your body flat and more straight, or back slightly curved. On the motorway, I think probably anything over 50, you're really going to start to feel the pressure of the wind pressing against you. Now, of course, you can put a screen on this and that's fine. I chose not to because it's not in keeping with the character and the style that I was going for. But it was incredibly noticeable on the motorway. You really feel that pressure of the wind, and you're clinging on, to be fair. I mean, if you're going to go 80 mile an hour down the motorway, then you really are going to be holding on tightly with the feeling that if you let go, you're just going to blow off the back. So I think when you combine all of that, what this does is it gives you a really raw, powerful feeling. It's like what I'd imagine my granddad would have ridden just after the war. You know, it feels very mechanical. You can hear the clicks and the bangs and the bumps and the wind and the raw power of that exhaust. And it's just a very different experience to that quite polished, highly tuned riding style that you would get on a sports bike. Okay, and then the fifth thing, the last thing that I noticed about a Sportster is the ability to make it your own. If I think about a sports bike, okay, what are you going to do on it? Well, you might change the exhaust. You might, if you're really into it, pop an air filter on and put a double bubble screen. Beyond that, alright, you can do some little colour changes here and there, but it's pretty well 95% of people, that's all they're going to do. On this bike, you buy it new or second-hand but unmodified, and it is a blank canvas. You can do whatever you like to this bike within, well, I think that's probably true actually. I was going to say within reason, but I think you can pretty well do anything. And when I went to the Sportster Sickness event where there were 700 to 900 Harley Sportsters, and we rode to Silverstone and raced the track, there were, I would say, probably not a single bike there that looked the same as another, exactly the same. And there were so many different styles. It was absolutely phenomenal. And if you haven't seen that video, check it out. I'll put a link down in the description. So my point is that this gives you something that, if you choose to, you can make into your own bike. And for me, that was a huge appeal, not only because it gave me a hobby that I could get involved in. I mean, this is how I got into making YouTube videos, was just a bit of a hobby and some fun and something to do. But actually, it also gives me something that I can do during the winter. You know, when your sports bike is away after autumn kicks in the UK, the winters are very cold. You don't want to be out riding in that when the salt's on the road. Well, I didn't anyway, on my nice shiny sports bike. And on this thing, that's alright. If I'm not riding it, that's cool, because I'll be taking it apart and putting it back together again and changing parts and customizing it and just turning it into the bike that I want it to be. And then when I get it out in the spring, I just can't wait to get involved in some of the more community side of things, some of the biker groups, things like the Sportster Sickness and other groups, to, you know, share what I've done and ride it. So I think there's almost two there. One is the customization that you can do and that whole scene of making it your own, and that sort of then ties into the feeling of community that you get with this kind of bike that I just never got on sports bikes. And that's not to say that they don't exist, because of course they do. You can go out on riding groups and things like that. It just feels to me that the community side is a bit stronger on Sportsters, and in particular, because that's one I've had, than it is on sports bikes. I'm going to do a little bonus one as well. Let's call it a 5+1. And that is, if you're a sports bike rider and you're going to get a Sportster like this, you're going to need to change all your gear, because you're going to look like a right a-hole riding around on a Sportster in your all-in-one leather suit and your city boots. Alright guys, well there we go. Those are my top 5. I would love to know what you think. Anybody that has made the switch, let me know whether you agree. Is there anything else that you would add to those 5 that really stuck out for you as something that you would expect a sports bike rider to see? And hey, if you've got a sports bike and you're thinking about getting a Sportster and there's some questions or some things that you're not sure about and you want to know, then stick a comment, because either I'll pop a reply on my thoughts, or the other guys on here who follow it and have their Sportsters, I'm sure, will scrum in and give you their opinions as well. So if you enjoyed the video, then please give us a thumbs up. If you didn't enjoy it, then give us a thumbs down, and if you could let me know why, I'd always appreciate it, and then I can try and make content better in the future. So I'll have more riding videos coming up, as always, on how-tos, customization, maintenance, and also just some general riding and topics for discussion. So if you're into that, you like the video, then hit that subscribe button, bottom right hand corner, and we'll see you soon.